Hello friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have a fresh compilation of revenge stories for you. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. And our first story. Steal my money and then become hostile when I ask for a refund? Have fun with that felony on your record. This happened a few years ago, right after I graduated college. I would make an 8-hour drive home a few times a year to see my family, usually over the holidays. During these trips, there was only wilderness, fields, mountains, and tiny little towns along the way. During one of these trips, I stopped at a gas station to get some food, and I apparently lost my debit card, or it was stolen. It was a card I never used and looked identical to my main one, so I didn't notice it missing until later when I got a call from my bank and see that my account overdrafted. Being fresh out of college, making $12 an hour, the $400 was a huge deal. I worked at a credit card processor at the time, so I had a very unusual familiarity with how credit card transactions worked. This was a debit card, but ran as credit. I could have done a chargeback, of course, but I knew that merchants were fined $15 for each chargeback, on top of the return, and got a ding on their record with Visa, MC, Amex. If they had too many chargebacks, they'd have their processing revoked and incur heavy fines. Merchants are usually mom-and-pop shops and are normally innocent in the matter, so I decided to give them a call. Also, the charges all came from the same gas station that I lost it at, so I suspected it was an employee who found or stole my card and was stupid enough to use it at work. I wanted to let the manager/owners know so they could keep an eye out for unscrupulous employees. Employee theft is unfortunately common and is not brought to light until a customer brings it up. I thought I'd just give them a call and ask for the refund. Easy. So I call and a woman answers. I asked to speak with the manager and she says she is the manager. I explained that I had lost my card at that location and someone had later used my card there. I said I didn't want to accuse anyone, but I think it may have been one of her employees that had the card and she may want to investigate. I also said I'd like a return for all the purchases to save them the hassle of a chargeback. When I usually work with managers in this situation, they're very willing to help and take employee theft very seriously. Instead, I met with hostility and insults. She told me I probably deserved it for losing my card in the first place and not noticing, and I deserved this lesson. She interrupted me and told me basically to go F myself and that none of her employees would steal. Getting a bad feeling, I asked for the number of the owner. She said there is no owner. What? Okay, by now I'm shaking in anger, so I tell her I'm calling the police and I hang up. She tries to call back and I don't answer. By now I'm angry crying. I have a feeling I know who did it, but now I need to prove it. I had no intention of calling the cops because what cops care about some petty credit card theft? It's incredibly hard to prove, and most cops have murder and stuff to worry about. Lucky for me, this is in the middle of nowhere, population 100 or something. First, I call my bank and ask if they have a record of the exact times the card was used. They gave me the times down to the minute. I then call police and get a very friendly woman. It seems she's not busy and actually listens to my story, including the hostile manager. I ask if she's able to go look at the surveillance tape or something. She says the store is 5 minutes away and she'll stop by. I guess she felt sorry for me or was bored, but I'll take it. She says she'll give me a call if she finds anything. I eagerly await her call, but wasn't expecting much. A couple days go by, and I get a call from the nice officer lady. She says that she went to the store and reviewed the footage. At the exact times I told her, the cameras caught the hostile manager making the purchases, signing receipts for the exact same amounts with a card that looked exactly like mine. Even better, they were going to charge her with felony identity theft, since making purchases on someone's card without permission is identity theft on top of monetary theft, at least in my state. They asked if I wanted any restitution, but my bank had refunded me the stolen money, so I declined. I was absolutely not expecting a cop to go out of their way to help me, and I was definitely not expecting it to result in an arrest. I felt a sense of pride for actually sticking up for myself, and not just taking the money from my bank and letting the thief go. I'm a pretty small and non-confrontational person, but that day I felt like a badass. If she'd been nice and worked with me, or even just apologized and done the returns, I wouldn't have called the cops. Because she was so rude and unhelpful, she got a felony instead. And our second story. Try to extort, harass, and ruin me? I'll make sure you're rightfully convicted of disability fraud. I live in an illegal rental in a place you'd call a landlord's market. There was a housing shortage, and although I had a great job, no credit problems, no background issues, it was impossible to rent somewhere affordable because of my dog. I eventually found a great place, but it came with a nutty landlord. She lived on the property. I'm not a choosing beggar, however, so I take it. For 12 months, I endure the landlord's violation of my rights, taking deposits she should not have, micromanaging my personal life and my guests. It's pretty awful. She's always high on painkillers with tiny pin needle pupils, telling me weird stuff and trapping me in conversation I'd rather not hear. Faced with homelessness, I take the trampling of my rights and privacy. She made me miserable. After a year, I had enough. She crossed the line when she had my boyfriend removed by the police when I was at work one day. He'd been staying for less than 48 hours, and I was gone for 2 weeks at home and had arrived back to my rental 48 hours before this. No one was in my rental while I was gone. On top of tossing my boyfriend out, she delivered a bill for his rent and utilities for staying the past 2 weeks that I was gone. No one was in my house. She'd already bullied me, and I guess she thought she could extort me. She created fake court paperwork to intimidate me. The bills I received from her were insane. They're not even the writings of a lucid human. She gets all sorts of details wrong and makes personal statements that are inappropriate. The place was empty, and I was gone, but she wrote a bill and insisted I pay for his tenancy. This is when crap hit the fan. I finally stand my ground. Extortion is the limit. Everything is falsified. I think it was the Vicodin talking and making her brave. As an aside, that'll be super relevant later, her employer had an open fraud case against her. She told me early in my tenancy because she dared them to come after her. Perhaps she should not have dared so hard. After the fake tenancy debacle, crap gets real. I take off work to read up on my rights and protect my dog/stuff. She starts harassing me. Specifically, she did these things over the course of a few days. Called from a blocked number and asked for a stripper/call girl. Called my work as a new landlord seeking a reference and told them I was partying as to why I wasn't at work. Came into my yard at 11 at night, stomping up my porch to scare me, then walked out of the yard saying it was a free country when I asked what the hell she was doing. Called the Humane Society, told them I had a vicious dog on the loose who attacked her dog. Called the police and sent them to my job. I work with kids, claiming she found drugs in my house. Needless to say, I was pretty freaked out by all these things. I got a TRO against her. She couldn't keep trying to ruin my career and get my dog euthanized and attempting to intimidate me. It was good for 3 years. I was happy I won in court. It was a great move for my safety and empowerment. However, when I did move, about 10 days after her extortion, she falsified documents, kept my deposit, and I was forced to go back to court to get my money. Again, I won. And although it took a lot of time and energy, eventually it was garnished from her account. I not only got out of my lease, rightfully, but took my deposit money back against her will. I had a restraining order for 3 years, and she did not know my new address. I was thrilled. The torment she put me through was unbelievable. So let's cut to the revenge. Remember that fraud case she boasted about? Well, it came back to bite her. Landlord boldly did construction, high as a kite on Vicodin, while collecting disability because she was wheelchair-bound. See the issue here? She played the system to get into early paid retirement, ate pills all day, increased her property value by building up her space, and collected money from illegal rentals. 4 months before I moved out, she was doing construction, and I had a strange feeling I should document her fraud. I knew she could turn on me at any point, and, well, I'm sure glad I had the foresight to do so. She'd gone to work the first day of her contract and fallen out of a wheelchair on a ramp that was not up to code. Almost 4 weeks later to the day, she was happily at home, continuing with her activities, building a tool shed from scratch. She was doing construction, with no wheelchair. Duh. She was bold and figured she'd never get caught. She was doing all sorts of physical activity. I decided to film her and make sure the date was noted. I also took pictures. Some part of me just knew I should document what I was seeing because she was an awful human who was leeching off the system. She worked in education and she couldn't be fired. Her position was tenured and she was holding her spot while on medical leave for over 4 years. They legally could not hire a new teacher. Substitutes poured in and out of her classroom. Hundreds of children missed out on a legitimate education because she held her spot. She was scum. I worked in a similar field, so I knew what damage she was doing with her actions. Back to the eviction TRO event. Shortly after moving out, when the restraining order was in effect, I went to her employer and offered evidence in the fraud case. It was a serious state-led fraud case against her. They were going after her. He was elated that I had such strong evidence. He put me in touch with private investigators. I handed over the evidence after sitting down with them and giving my statement of her activity and how she was mobile at home. I didn't have to exaggerate, and I didn't have to lie. I just told them exactly what happened. Even if she didn't burn me, I felt like I was doing my civic duty by ensuring the kids had a real teacher in their classroom instead of this piece of garbage. Months later, I called the investigators and found out my evidence was what really sealed the deal. She was convicted of disability fraud and fired from her position and was potentially going to pay back years' worth of disability payments. I did that. I'm the reason her scam fell apart. She thought she could bully me into extortion. She didn't. She thought she could ruin my career and hurt my dog when I stood up to her. She didn't. In fact, I won. It was what I needed to be empowered after she crapped on me. It wasn't even revenge as much as standing up for myself. If she did have to pay it back, she'd only have her house to pay with. My dream is that she lost her house, ended up a renter, and just hopes for a kind landlord. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.